Indrani's going to tell us a great story about fear of talking in public due to her accent and how she arrived late to one of David's seminars and it put her just in the right place at the right time. Welcome to Talking TEAM-CBT, where you'll hear stories from therapists and clinicians around the world on their journey and experience with TEAM-CBT.
Today, we're excited to have another fantastic guest. We have with us Dr. Indrani Mookerjee, who is a therapist with over 2.5 decades of experience, who owns a group practice in Maryland. She is a level 4 certified team therapist, as well as trainer, and works with adults and adolescents experiencing mood, relationship, habits, or addiction problems, and also teaches and trains other therapists. So thanks, Indrani, for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay, we're excited. You know, we both of us know you quite well from our years together, but it's always great in these interviews to, get to know you a little bit better, and sometimes hear some of these stories and experiences that you've had over the years. And that was fun. We learned so much more about people. And I think even maybe just starting with that, to give us a little bit of a sense, tell us, just like maybe when and how you first got involved in team.
Yeah, I mean, Dr. Burns used to come to the East Coast. He was, even after he moved to California, he would come frequently to the East Coast to conferences and workshops. So I saw him at one such workshop. I think it was the Networker Conference in DC in the late 1990s. And I had been trained as a CBT therapist. So I was very familiar with Dr. Burns, but seeing him was pretty cool. And then I kind of attended a few other workshops that he had, but it wasn't until 2018 when I went for my first intensive with him in San Francisco that I got completely hooked, and I since then have been using only team to treat my patients and treat myself as well. So that's the genesis of my team journey.
That's so cool, because your story goes back, quite a few decades then to seeing Dr. Burns, David in the 90s, and kind of being intrigued and interested, but not till around 5 or so years ago, being at the intensive, and maybe tell us a little bit like what that intensive was like, spending, it's not the treatment intensive we talk about, but a training intensive, right, of like 4 days of intense training. And what was it that just hooked you into this becoming a skills platform?
Stole my question, Daniel. I wanted to ask. Yeah, what got
you on the same page there,
awesome.
right? What was it?
Yeah,
it was intense, to say the least, and I just saw it was really intense, but I saw Dr. Burns work his magic, during the demos, and Angela Crumb. So some of the luminaries of our community were there, and it was just it's transformative, right? I think when I talk to new therapists who are just kind of intrigued by team, not really sure, I tell you that first experience is the best experience of team. And I was just floored because I just had never seen anything like this before. And the warmth and the empathy and the kindness of everybody around. I was going from the East Coast. I didn't know anyone there, but I felt so welcome and so included. And Dr. Burns's energy level was scary. I mean, he would come at 7 in the morning. He wouldn't even take a lunch break, and work till 6 or 7, and then he wanted to walk. I'm like, I can't. He has like 2.5 decades on me, and I'm like, I can't keep up with this thing. I have to go back and kind of rest, and then. It was amazing. It was just, I think Dr. Burns was fabulous, but it was also the community that really drew me in. And it was not scary as it had been in other situations to fail, because that's one thing that we do consistently, I think, in our work with team, is that we fail a lot. almost at it on a daily basis with almost every patient. So that was the first place where that terror of failing kind of diminished.
Yeah,
So,
joyous failure, right? We call it.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten to the joyous part, but not terrorized by it anymore.
Not so
I'm
afraid.
working on it. Not so afraid.
Yeah, it's interesting. You said you saw David work his magic, and you're right. Like, I mean, it always floors me. Like, I went for a couple walks with him too, and he really goes. Like, and you mentioned transformative, and our listeners have heard several of our interviewers say that TEAM is transformative. Can you give us an example of what that looks like so they might understand? Because it's a big word. What do you mean by transformative?
Yeah, let me give you a personal example of this.
Sure.
So in the 90s, when Dr. Burns used to come here, I went for, I think that the same one I'm talking about, the Networker Conference in DC. This is a gigantic conference. It's one of these giant hotels, you know, these Watergate type hotels. And he had a huge conference room. And I'm thinking at least a couple thousand people probably were there. It was David Burns. He was sort of the marquee speaker. And I, you know, lived in the suburbs, I mean, not far from DC, but I was commuting. I was not staying in the hotel. And so I ended up coming late a little bit. So all the seats were taken and I got the front row, the seat that I never wanted to be in. It was like the most daunting experience. I was like
exposure.
flustered. It's tremendous amount of exposure. Yeah. Just overwhelmed and flustered and all of that. And he was doing the shame attacking module. And I didn't know. I kind of walked into it, right? I had no idea. So it was, he wanted volunteers. I was looking away. In that split second, our eyes locked because I was just underneath the mic. I was just like right there.
You were in the right spot.
Yeah, right spot. And he kind of, you know, gestured and beckoned, and I just, you know, had to follow instructions at that point. And he said, "So what do you want to say?" And I just said, you know, the reason I'm not asking a lot of questions, which I always ask questions, and that's the way I learn, is because I am very self-conscious of my accent. And I didn't want to kind of expose myself by you know, talking and asking questions in this gigantic forum. And this was off the mic, right? The mic was off. I just said that to him. He said, "Good. Now tell this to everybody."
I thought that was going to come. Here's the mic.
Make sure you use your accent, right?
Exaggerate the accent as much as possible.
Exactly. And he said, you tell them what I'm telling you. So he was telling me all this in my ear. And I was like blasting it out to all these people. Oh my God. I thought I was going to die. But the cool thing is that I never had that fear again.
Wow.
It was a 10-second cure.
It's, you know, that you know, feeling like you're gonna die, that moment just before you had the epiphany, and so you felt like you're gonna die. And then when did the anxiety subside? Did it take a few days to really sink in, or right then? Or?
Instantly. I literally thought I was going to fall. I didn't think my legs would hold me up. I thought I was going to fall. I'm like, you know, I'm going for sort of going for bust anyways. I'm sounding like an idiot. I'm acting like an idiot. If I fall, I mean, it doesn't get worse than this.
How can it get worse? Yeah.
Yeah. I literally thought I didn't fall. And as soon as I said it, woof, it just left me.
Wow.
And and the amazing thing is that I was then mobbed in the bathrooms and in the hallways. Everyone telling me what a pretty accent I have.
I love that. Yeah, and so often, right, after we've all done our own exposures, you know, not only does it of course work and relieve us of the anxiety, but it often does more than that. It kind of transports us to euphoria, joy, and happiness. It's the other extreme. It's so cool.
Exactly. The you know, the enlightenment, as Dr. Burns calls it. I mean, it goes away, but the memory of it lingers. I mean, I can still feel it in my body, that sense of relief. And if I hadn't done the exposure, I would have never experienced that.
Yeah.
Such a great story. So maybe John, if you can tell us a little bit, you know, about your practice and how, you said that since 2018, you've really exclusively been using this as your framework. Can you tell us a little bit how like it's impacted your practice and the clients that you work with?
Yeah, greatly, greatly. Because I, use all the tools that we have available to us. And so I start with, doing the testing with the brief mood survey and the evaluation, and then work through the model using tools and measurements at each step. And what I found is that not only has my work been more effective, as evidenced by the measurements, but my patients, they feel like they're getting something out of it. And even the patients who come back after a couple of years or whatever tell me it's just a review. It's not from scratch, because they have those tools and they have been using those tools. And and it doesn't take as long. It's just I tell people to budget about 8 to 10 weeks. A lot of times it doesn't even take that long. So it's a short term, the recovery is rapid, and it's a sustainable approach.
Yeah. I love that you talked about how sometimes patients come back for like a little checkup or, tweak. And you're right, it is just kind of like a review process where they get stuck.
Yeah.
I think it's important for people to realize that that's okay to come in for a tune-up, as David says. Even he said he offers tune-ups. And I know like a lot of this with this rapid recovery, the idea is thinking people are like, well, yeah, but is it going to last? And the reality is we do relapse. And, I know I do personal work myself, and I reach out to colleagues. So I don't think anyone should feel ashamed of having to get some support and help think through some of their messed up thoughts. And sometimes we need that. But it's still
absolutely. Yeah, it's still rapid recovery, and you still have the tools. And one of the other things, Angela and Daniel, that has been so powerful for me personally is this that it's not the traditional training that we've all had is very othering, I think, right? I'm some great sage and seer, and you patient are some kind of inferior being, and I'm here to kind of cure you of your inferior feelings. Yeah. And Dr. Burns has completely eliminated. And I think one of we talk about being transformative, and of course also very powerful method has been self-disclosure. Disclosing, that I felt anxious too, but you know what? Let me show you the way out of the woods. I've traversed those woods and come out of it on the other side feeling pretty damn good. So that's the other part of this approach that I love.
Yeah. The so many nuances. I mean, and is that what makes TEAM different from CBT, or is there something else? Because you said you were a TEAM-CBT, excuse me, you were a CBT therapist before TEAM. Like, what made it so different? You said it's very different. Give us a sense of that.
Right, the A in TEAM changed the world, and that is the assessment of resistance. Right, we've all been trained to think of resistance as a bad thing, right? These patients are resistant, and they don't want the help we are giving them, and all these kinds of things, and great water cooler gossip kind of topic of how resistant the patients are. The reality is that thank God they're resistant. So we have a very structured way of not only assessing the resistance, but also kind of leaning into it and honoring that resistance. And it's something magical happens, because as soon as we do that, it kind of melts away. And Dr. Burns is very clear, there's a process resistance and there's an outcomes resistance. And each kind of bucket of the three major sort of buckets that we work with, right? The mood problems, relationship problems, and habits and addictions, and they have their own set of resistance. And that's just been incredibly. I mean, that's just been incredible when the patients are like, "Yeah, I don't need to fight this anymore."
Yeah, that's beautiful. Don't have to. I love that you said it's, thank God that our patients are resistant.
Yeah, it protects them. It
Yeah.
protects us. Yeah, my resistance has protected me so many different situations.
Yeah, for sure.
So wonderful to kind of, get these insights and hear all of your experiences. And John, I wish we had some more time, but definitely want to ask you at least, one more question that we always like to ask at the end here, which is, if, gosh, all the, therapists in the world were listening or watching here, what would be the one thing, if you could distill it, one thing about TEAM that you would like them to know?
Yeah, I think that there are actually maybe two things, Daniel, if I might. One is the importance of measurement. I think that's super duper important, because every therapist, whether they actually say it out loud or not, they want to know. We all want to know if what we did helped our patients or not. And this is a very sort of a objective scientific way of figuring that out immediately, right? People talk about long-term studies. I'm like, great, let Dr. Burns do his long-term studies, but I have a study right here. Let me show you. I have the whole graph of progress right here. So that's one. And the second is really using the resistance. I don't know whether any other method has this. Approach has this. They generally focus on the methods, but I think assessing a person's resistance is a very powerful and helpful method. That itself can become a method. A lot of times people don't need anything more than that. When they realize that, oh yeah, this is why, this is what it says about me that is amazing. And these are the ways that my feelings were helping. So I would say that measurement and learning how to assess resistance, I think, should be in every therapist's toolkit.
Yeah, beautifully said. That, the resistance piece is really, I have had clients who, once they realized it was okay to have these emotions, the guilt was gone and the shame was gone about having emotions. Like, oh, I'm allowed to have feelings. Wow. Doesn't make me a clinical diagnosis because I have feelings.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
It was great to have you. We're out of time already. It goes so fast. Thank you so much for being here, Indrani.
Great, thank you.
You guys are, my heroes, and I look up to you guys. And thank you for having me here with you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thanks, Bye, everyone.